Hi, I'm Eileen Roche, founder of Designs and Machine Embroidery, and I'm excited to be here today with a very special program. Of course, this is kind of a pop-up Facebook Live, YouTube Live, because normally we only, broadcast on Thursday. But this is a special week. This is the week of the Wisconsin Great Quilt Show, and tomorrow evening on September 10th at 7 o'clock, I think, is going to be the premiere of Nancy Zieman, Extraordinary Grace. And since I was honored to be interviewed for that documentary, I thought it would be, good to kind of share my experience with you, but not only my experience, but also Mary Mulari, who was Nancy Zieman's dearest friend and the most frequent guest on Sewing with Nancy. So welcome, Mary Mulari. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Eileen. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, making it through this unusual year, and thinking so much about Nancy this week, especially.
I agree. Absolutely. She's always, I know, like you, she's always close to your heart, and she is mine. And I think many of our viewers have Nancy Zieman product in their sewing room. So if they don't think of her, they may pick up her 6-in-1, measuring tool, or use templates to make handbags, that kind of thing, or refer to books that she wrote for tips and techniques. So, she's just a part of our life. Really, it's amazing.
I just yesterday I was kind of cleaning out a drawer and came upon this stash of this is tissue paper, colored tissue paper, and I thought of Nancy because I bought this stash just because when we made patterns for television, we didn't use white paper because that wasn't kind with cameras, didn't work very well. So I have this stash, and now I guess I can use it to wrap gifts. But very simple things remind me of Nancy.
That's right. Absolutely. Here's my sister Marie Zeno piped in and said, "Hi, Mary. She's happy to see you." And so many people. Retha Ranke is a regular viewer, and she says that she is reading Seems Unlikely right now. What an amazing woman Nancy was, for sure. Right. And we have Karina Paulson is in Norway joining us from there. And you've spent some time over in that area, haven't you?
I have. I've visited Norway actually just one time, but I have a niece who lives there with her family. And so I'm always interested to hear from her and to talk about Norway with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's kind of off topic. So Barbara George, she said she has religiously watched Sewing with Nancy, and she's also done many sweatshirt makeovers that you designed, Mary. So I know there's lots of people walking around America with sweatshirts that you designed.
Well, I have to show one.
Okay.
This is a sweatshirt that was it's a sweatshirt turned into a tunic with interesting sleeves.
Nice.
And facings and buttons, someone's button. And many of your viewers, the viewers of Sewing with Nancy, will remember that Nancy wore this on TV. We would swap out sweatshirts for the show that we were wearing. If we weren't talking about that particular sweatshirt, we had it on our bodies. So our wardrobe planned for us. So
absolutely, Nancy and I did the same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this should be familiar. So
yeah. Oh my. So Mary, a year ago, we were each invited by Wisconsin Public Television to travel up to Madison, to the university where all of the Sewing with Nancy taping had occurred. And we were interviewed for this documentary, right?
That's I looked at the date. It was July 8th of 2019, which seems like such a long time ago now. But
the world
it was really a pleasure and an honor, as you say, to be invited. And so we sat for hours with Grant Fenster answering questions. I really missed Vicki, who was Nancy's expert makeup person. We had to do our own, and that's not one of my skill sets. But in viewing, we had a chance to view this documentary in advance. And I have to say, I said to my sister, gosh, I wish I didn't look so old. And she said, well, Mary, you are. That's something a sister can tell you.
That is something a sister would tell you. And I will second that. I most certainly miss the makeup artist. I've never looked so horrible on camera than I do, as you will see on Thursday night if you tune in. But also, my experience with Grant was I was in the chair for 4 hours. And I really felt at the end, it was like an interrogation. It was such a deep dive into my relationship with Nancy, into Nancy's impact on the sewing industry, and also, her personal feelings and the challenges that she went through. Mm-hmm. And, it was 2 years, almost 2 years after she passed. So by that time, I most certainly could talk about Nancy comfortably without getting upset and weepy and so forth. But boy, 4 hours in that chair, I most certainly did shed some tears. And it's pretty obvious on that, documentary. But anyway, it's not about me. It was about Nancy. So
yeah. Well,
we are where we are.
We could talk about what we're wearing today, which relates to what people will see on the screen. I'm wearing this, I call it slime green, a shirt. It's a color that Nancy and I really both like to wear. And I'm wearing a necklace that actually was Nancy's. She bought it when she was in Minnesota visiting me. And she wore it, you'll see it on the documentary at least one time. And she really liked this necklace. And before she died, she gave it to me. So believe me, it's a very special piece that I really treasure and enjoy wearing and remembering her through her necklace.
Right. And these earrings that I'm wearing, I also wore in the documentary. And I call these my Nancy earrings. My last visit with Nancy at her home, I had several in those last months of her life. She had a basket of jewelry that were all tagged with Post-it notes and names of people that she wanted to gift that jewelry to. And these earrings had my name on it. And these earrings were hers, that were a gift to her from her sister. So she said to me, from one sister to another, I want you to have these. It was very moving. So I wear them all the time. When I need, I wear them because they're sparkly and they're pretty. And sometimes when I go to a really serious business meeting, I wear them because I feel Nancy's power in them.
Yeah, I've worn my necklace for the same reason. For an important meeting. Yeah, it just is a really nice thing to have. I'm the only one who knows, but it really helps.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So,
and then also we were also gifted later, about a year, maybe not quite a year after Nancy had passed. Her sister passed on scarves to many of her friends and associates. That was just so touching. Nancy loved scarves. She had a beautiful collection of hand dyed and just all kinds of different scarves. And so to receive that in the mail was very special, for sure.
Oh, it was. Yeah. Appreciate that.
In the documentary, people are really going to learn about the struggles that Nancy had as a child and also as a businesswoman. And, personally, she was a beautiful woman. I think many people focus on the Bell's palsy and, the facial paralysis, and they don't often look behind it. She was, 5'10" or more and slim, athletic looking. She could carry herself with such grace. Right. She really could. Right. She had a presence when she walked in the room. Mm-hmm. And they'll also learn about her spiritual side, because Nancy most certainly was a very faithful woman, taught Sunday school for 30 years, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I know. It's amazing. And, you think about that Sunday school, she did an awful lot of travel in her career.
Right.
Yeah.
I did always work with someone else, so that was kind of like a tag team. They filled in for each other because, as you know, too many times we were flying somewhere or returning home on a Sunday. So, yeah, it was an obligation she took very seriously and attended to as much as she could. But there were many times she couldn't, so she worked it out. So
she did. She worked it out.
Yeah.
And she found joy in her work. I mean, most certainly her family. I mean, we can't forget, you know, how her solid marriage with Rich Zieman and the raising of those two boys are just, you know, that
Right.
made her who she really was. And of course, her grandchildren.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But she was also an artist that she came into a little later in life, right? After meeting Natalie.
Yes, I think that's where she really blossomed in that facet. I think also she really enjoyed photography, and that shows up also in her landscape quilts, where she kind of duplicated photograph in fabric. And
Right.
Natalie Sewell was very instrumental in this new aspect to her life. So
Yeah. And well, we might as well share. I have Nancy Zieman's last landscape quilt that she was making before she passed. And I can bring that up on camera so you can take a look at there we go. Maybe put that solo, Sam. And you can see it, you know, it was in process. I had made her this small canvas. This is a design board that fits in your lap. And it allows her, you know, would allow her to be on the couch and design instead of standing at a wall. And we can't seem to get that. That's not real. We'll come back to that. I'll just talk through it. And then when we go small screen, it seems to be a little crisper. Anyway, you know, so it brought her a lot of joy to be able to do that during that time before she passed. But she didn't get that far. You know, her health dwindled fairly quickly.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. It was
So.
It was
And my sister Marie Wardino, she says her memory of Nancy was unique as well because Nancy had a great sense of humor, right?
Yeah, right. She sure did, and she really enjoyed the opportunities to be. I call it silly. You know, the time that she got to join the cheerleaders in Beaver Dam and perform at Sewing Weekend. And then she and I had that wonderful opportunity to do the Kick It Up a Stitch programs. And yeah, really silly. And, you know, she really couldn't show that sense of humor so much during Sewing with Nancy because, you know, it wasn't a time to tell jokes. People tuned in because they were wanting serious sewing information. And so you could see little bits of it. You know, I remember one time something that we were going to be using fell to the floor behind that table we were working on. And she announced to the whole TV audience that Mary just dropped this. I could go along with it. But yeah, it wasn't, she really had, and people who saw her live in person in the seminar also experienced the great sense of humor.
Right. And also on the set of Sewing with Nancy, often when the film wasn't rolling, she would tell blonde jokes.
Right.
Yeah. And they were great. They were just great.
There was a whole notebook of them and they were fun to share.
Right. And that team at Wisconsin Public Television that was responsible for bringing that into our living room every week. Boy, they were phenomenal. And you'll meet them in extraordinary grace. There are several of the team members, 4 that were interviewed for this documentary, and they each have a unique take on Nancy and, of course, worked with her in a different capacity. The 2 camera women, Leslie and Cassie, you know, they're hysterical. And I mean, they are very funny women. And, but you know, it's pretty serious on the set of Sewing with Nancy, right?
Oh, right. It is. You know, everyone's there to do their job and to make things go as smoothly as possible. During the breaks, as you said, sometimes those blonde jokes would come out, but yeah, everybody is really looking. And the feeling I get too, or got from everyone, it was a family. A TV family working to produce this show, and it wasn't just you know, random people wandering through. It was a group of people who cared, and
absolutely
cared for Nancy and respected her, and and thought of ways they could help her make something look better. You know, they would sometimes offer opinions, and that was great. Yeah,
it was really great. And it was a little unnerving, especially the first 1 or 2 times that I taped. You know, everyone, all the camera people and in the production room, they're all have headphones on and microphones, and they're talking to each other. But Nancy and her guests do not have any communication with that. We don't hear what's going on. So after the camera's cut and, we're kind of sitting there and they're reviewing the tape to make sure we don't have to, do a retake or whatever. Sometimes you would just hear this eruption of laughter. And it was like, what do we do?
Right.
So then you get used to that, and it's part of the gig. It was really fun. Yeah.
In the early days of taping programs, I would fly to Madison and we'd work in Beaver Dam, and then the next day we'd tape 3 programs, but there wasn't enough time in a day to tape all 3 completely. So we'd do 1 and 2, and then I'd be on for like a third of the 3rd program. Right. And then Nancy would return the following week and complete that program. So I had many people say to me, I was watching you on Sewing with Nancy, and then you disappeared. So I would have to explain how we do these 2 and a third programs, and then but then we came up with a solution, which it seems so simple, because at the end of that last section, right before I was done with what I was contributing, the camera would come to me, and I would say, watch now as Nancy shows you how to do a particular, reverse applique. And then, I was gone, and then it was like I had then given her permission to be there by herself. And so no one now asks me, no one has asked me about where'd you go?
Right.
But now, and more recently, the programs, it was just 2 programs that were taped.
Right.
So the format changed a little bit, but that was kind of interesting from the earlier days.
Do you have a favorite memory or a favorite show that you did with Nancy? Technique maybe that?
Well, we did a program of zipper projects, let's see, zip and carry bags, and no, I'm sorry, totes to go. And one of the totes was a zipper project, 5.5 yard length of zipper, and it got zipped up into a tote bag. But we started off with this massive zipper, and also that was the only time that the crew responded so positively to my work. Once we did the there's my phone.
That's okay. That's what it goes.
Sorry. When we finished the rehearsal, they came out from behind the cameras and they said, "Okay, let's see that again. Where can I buy the zipper, and who's got a sewing machine?" I thought,
wow,
success.
Right.
The crew wants to do this.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasant surprise. And I also enjoyed the last show that I taped with Nancy, which was about second chance T-shirt gifts. And I have the quilt here. I if I could just briefly.
Yeah, show us, please.
This is a quilt I made afterwards for myself, and it's 35 of my T-shirts. But what I placed specially in the center is this square. Both Nancy and I have really strong feelings about how 4-H influenced us and helped us with our careers, starting out as young people. So I really enjoy using this and wearing, using it. It's got flannel on the back, and it was the first project from when we did the second. So it was a pattern that goes.
Oh, there we go. Great.
Yeah. And there are many other T-shirt projects because most families have a ton of T-shirts, and so that was fun because Nancy had so many inquiries and how do you make a T-shirt quilt, and so address that. So
that's great. That's really great. And the barometer of the reaction of the camera crew is so it's like that in every studio around America, I think, because I know for the photography studio for the magazine. That was our barometer too. We would present a garment or what have you, and if they wanted to wear it or where could we buy it, that kind of thing, we knew, oh, this is a winner.
Right. Yeah, that's fun because you don't always know what that's going to be. You know,
Right.
you hope everything, but it doesn't turn out quite that way. But and what
They
about
also help.
Eileen? What's your favorite?
I would have to say the handbags was my favorite taping with Nancy. I loved every single one, but
Right.
education-wise, I think that was a really cool technique, and Nancy loved it. That was absolutely her favorite technique. And she didn't really like a lot of embellishment. She was not one to wear flashy clothes or,
Right.
a lot of contrast prints and that kind of thing. So she was pretty conservative when it came to embroidery. To show how you could use an embroidery machine to duplicate precision sewing techniques in the hoop, she just thought that was the be all end all. So that was super fun. Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of something I pulled out yesterday from my samples. And this is a table runner. I'm going to show it. You can see that it has doilies. And I knew that this would really appeal to Nancy, just because she liked a tone on tone look. But this is kind of a challenge for TV. So the one I did for the book and then for TV has more contrast. So you see those same doilies, and they're pieced, and this has been proven to be a really favorite project because people have a lot of doilies too, along with their T-shirts. So I just knew, I think we both kind of got a feeling of what would really appeal to Nancy. Not to say that she dictated what we presented, but we kind of would know what would be something she'd really like.
And, in the documentary, I think it's pretty much addressed that. Like, I know for myself, when I would be invited to be on Sewing with Nancy, we would agree on a date, and it would be pretty much up to me to come up with the topic. We would bash a couple ideas around. But, I really wanted to impress her. I mean, you brought your A game to Sewing with Nancy. And in fact, I reserved my best ideas for Sewing with Nancy, because I knew if she loved it, then so would the audience. And that was, the key to success for sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And the ideas, we would, email and so forth, and images back and forth. But really, when you landed in Madison and then drove to Beaver Dam on Monday afternoon and presented, I always said I acted like a piñata. I'd come with bags and they would just open and everything would explode out, and all the step outs and samples. And it's a mess, right? When you travel. Yeah. And then she could sort through that pile and just very quickly edit it down into the images, the samples, the step outs that we would need that would get this message across. And it was absolutely amazing to watch her do that process, just like that. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. She was a master at fitting programs together. Which items can we show, and what will fit into the time. That really came to be. I was very impressed by that, and I think that just came by experience and practice.
Yes.
So it was. And preparing for the shows too. Preparing those step outs takes a lot of time.
I know.
And and you need those so much. And sometimes we prepare a few extras, but I really wanted to show up in Beaver Dam with as much done as I possibly could, because I didn't want to be a challenge or a problem to Nancy's staff to prepare more than they were counting on. I really hope that what I came with would be adequate.
Right. I mean, it would be all hands on deck if needed. But, my goal was, I'm sure like you, is to arrive prepared with maybe one or two small elements missing, and then have a nice lunch with Nancy and maybe shop, right? I mean, not that we got to do that, but, at least it wasn't pressure from sewing 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., all day. You didn't want to, because then you're exhausted and you have to get up early and go on air the next day and so forth.
Yeah,
so.
Right. It was, it was a very packed visit. it's not like, but it really didn't seem so hectic that it was uncomfortable. So,
Right. Yeah, Nancy, the title of the documentary, Extraordinary Grace, is so aptly named because she was a graceful person.
right,
She really was. She didn't really get flustered, and if she did, it wasn't obvious. She
right,
wouldn't share
right.
that. And, it was just, she was 70 and sunny, right?
Mhm.
It's pleasant to be around.
Oh,
Yeah.
and when I think about the pain that she often was enduring while taping and preparing
Ah,
for television, I
yeah.
don't know how I could have endured all of that and then tried to be pleasant on,
Yeah.
well, I've been thinking lately about a Finnish word, which is sisu, sisu, and it's a word that means like fortitude, guts, strength, courage. It kind of encompasses all those really positive values of character. And
Mhm.
that word certainly applies to Nancy as well. So that's
Right.
a nice memory to think about in relation to Nancy.
Do you have your badge, Mary?
I do, yes. Um,
So I'll share this story. I digitized this patch which says "Make Nancy Proud" because at Nancy's funeral, there was a private room for the family and close friends, and Mary and I were in that space prior to going into the service. And Mary had some words of wisdom. We were we had moments of teariness and so forth, but on the whole, it was a pretty uplifting moment in that private space. And Mary, kind of how she can look at you and just say, well, we should carry on and make Nancy proud. And so I remembered that. It really stuck in my head. So I digitized those patches and I brought them to the taping of Extraordinary Grace. And the night before I taped with Grant and you taped with Grant, we had dinner with three of the other guests that were going to appear: Lori Gorman, the producer, and Cassie and Leslie, the camera women. And so I gave each of them, and Deanna Springer, I gave each of them the badge and said, just put this in your handbag or sew it on your clothes. Just, keep it a part of your world, right? And then after I taped with Grant, at the very end, I handed him that. And I said, now it's your job to make Nancy proud. And he really did. It's a fabulous documentary. You're going to hear from her mom. You're going to hear Barbara talk about, her memories of when Nancy was first afflicted with Bell's palsy and how she coped through her teenage and high school, well, they're simultaneously the same years in college and so forth. So, and of course, her husband, Rich, speaks, and so does her sons. It's quite moving, right? Wouldn't you agree, Mary? Yeah.
Great. And also Nancy's really much younger sister, Gina, appears to speak as well. There was an 18-year difference in their ages, and it was fun. It was something that I watched and saw their relationship develop probably more in adulthood than
Yeah.
in the earlier years. And I had a chance to visit with Gina in one of my last visits with Nancy, and I could tell that there was a very deep love there for between the sisters.
Absolutely. And not easy to do when there's such a large age difference.
Right, right.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, how do they get to watch Extraordinary Grace? So I think we should share
Sure.
that this week, Mary, you and I would have been heading to Madison probably today,
Right.
so that we could teach tomorrow or at least participate in the first watch of Extraordinary Grace. Because the idea was it was going to premiere at the Quilt Show on the Thursday or Friday night special event, and everyone who was in the documentary was going to be there in the audience, and we could all experience this together, which isn't going to happen, but that's okay, because now everyone all across America can watch it also. And it's free. All you have to do is go to quiltshow.com and register. That's all you have to do. You just have to register, and then you will be able to also register for the here we go, for the Extraordinary Grace premiere. And that's just another, check box that you have to check and just say that you want to be a part of it. And then you will be sent a link to view it. It's really so it's going to be a wonderful way to spend a Thursday evening and watch that. It is just going to be really special.
Yeah, it's about an hour long, and there's no cost to it either. So you can get it all free. So,
and Nancy and I have already seen it because we were in it. We were honored with a link to view it privately, in our home last week. Mm-hmm. So that's how we know how horrible we look on camera. Yeah. But we also, experienced it with my husband, and a box of tissues. Most certainly, I needed a box of tissues. Mm-hmm. But also, another way to participate in the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show is in the 4-H virtual community quilt. Now, Nancy, as you know, maybe you don't know, but she really got her start in teaching sewing in 4-H. She taught how to make a waistband as a teen. That was her project for 4-H. And boy, you have to watch. I'm not going to give it all away because it's really an extraordinary story as to how that came to be. So, Mary, you have a block that you've already uploaded, right?
Right. And I chose this because the heart is one of the symbols of 4-H. The slogan is, and I don't know that I can come up with this totally, but I pledge my head to better thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to service, and my health to better living. It's something like that. So I chose the heart, and this is an applique, and I really like that little line going through. This is moving onward, and that's a piece of striped fabric that I cut across the grain. Here's your little sewing tip with this. When you cut across the grain, you can, and turn under the edges, treat it like bias tape. You can make it behave something like bias tape. You see the curve, but it's the cross grain that allows that curving to happen. So, and then there's a little bit of that lovely slime green that Nancy and I shared, our common love for the colors. So that's a little explanation. And then I think I wrote about 3 sentences. That was the other thing that we could do when we submitted a quilt square, is to, write a little something. So that's what I did.
Very nice. Very nice. And so, Mary, mine is still digital, but, right. I still have 24 hours, so you never know what's going to happen. But I, taped with Nancy a few years ago, and we did crazy quilting with your embroidery machine. So I took one of the blocks from that book and then added all these little charm motifs. The jacket is really supposed to be representative of the T-shirts that Nancy and I did together. And the dress form is, of course, just all of her teaching that we've learned from her on sewing. And then the handbag, of course, is for our handbag collections. And the bumblebees and the butterflies, they are resemblance of her garden and her landscape quilts, because she most certainly had a beautiful garden. And many of some of the landscape quilts that we have seen and enjoyed over the years are from her own garden. So, I mean, she really had a green thumb, right, Mary?
Oh gosh, it was a beautiful place in the summer. And the gardening was very special for her. It was, I think, a release of work, something different that she was doing with her hands, and that she could enjoy the fruits of her labor in the garden as well as in the sewing room. So I like your symbols, Eileen. I like that combination.
Thank you. And, she grew up on a farm. So, gardening, farming was in her heart for sure. And many a time I'd be at her house and we'd go out to the vegetable garden and pick tomatoes or green peppers to, use for dinner. I just love that. I just thought that was so fun. Right.
Yeah, it was great. I laughed with her about the fact that I could tell she grew up on a farm when she could back up a vehicle. And backing up a vehicle with a trailer behind is a skill that people who grow up on farms just are able to do. Me, not so much. I grew up in a in the country, but not on a farm. But
Yeah.
Nancy's good at that because she did her share of driving farm tractors and with a trailer behind. So she had.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, but since this year is so unique, the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show is only virtual. They are not meeting at the Alliance Center in Madison, which is unfortunate. But you can participate for sure. When you register, you'll see an offering of classes. And if you would be so kind as to make a donation to the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show, it is Wisconsin Public Television's largest fundraiser for this great programming that we have all enjoyed for years on public television. So I know, Nancy, Mary, you recently made a donation. In fact, you were the one that told me you could do that. I didn't even know you could do this. I donate regularly to PBS, but I didn't know that I could actually do it to the Quilt Show.
I decided I know just a little bit of all the work that went into this. And so I just thought I want to support this show even in its virtual form and look forward to another year when it would be live and in person. So I think it's a very worthy cause, and I'm really glad to be able to make that donation.
That's great. I agree. I agree. We want them to be back. And Mary, you're not home doing nothing, right?
Well, that's true. This is I guess a picture of my the homepage of my website. And yeah, I'm working. I'm going to have a new apron pattern out shortly. It's going to be called the Viola Apron. I named it for my mother's. I used my mother's middle name, and it will have included with it a reversible mask pattern in 3 sizes. So you can have a face mask to match your apron.
Nice. How many? Do you know what number apron pattern this is for you?
I think it's going to be number 15 now. That will be the 11th pattern I have in print. And I have another one here I'd like to show because I used some of the fabric that Nancy designed for Riley Blake. This is my apron. It's got a bib top, and these are from Nancy's Farmhouse Floral Prints. And then I'm going to show the bottom half of it. It has pockets all the way across the bottom, so you can put your clothespins in or your cleaning supplies or sewing supplies. And of course, all of my patterns are reversible. So, oh gosh, sometimes I don't get any phone calls.
Yeah.
And today,
but today
wants to talk. So sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I understand. Did you get them handled, Mary?
Oh yeah, I'm just ignoring them. That's
ignoring them. Okay. Well, to continue on this vein of exploring Nancy Zieman Extraordinary Grace, tomorrow I'm going to have Marge Russell, the co-author of Seems Unlikely, on Facebook Live at 1:00. And so, she's the person who co-wrote the Seems Unlikely with Nancy, and they developed a very strong relationship and have shared many memories together. And if you've been seeing the trailer or the teaser for Extraordinary Grace, there's a video, a cassette player on the makeup table in the makeup room at Wisconsin Public Television, and it's Nancy's voice talking about what people take from Sewing with Nancy, why they watch. And those tapes are actually Marge Russell's tapes. She has 80 to 100 hours of audio tape from all of her interviews with everyone who, wanted to partake in that book, so in her research. So it'll be really exciting to have Marge here, Mary. I'm sure you've met Marge, right?
Yeah, I spent a little time with her in an interview when she was working on Seems Unlikely. You'll see Marge several times. She's so well-spoken and really came to understand Nancy so well. And I'm sure they felt that they were good friends after all of this was over. Yeah. And so I'm glad that she'll be spending time with you tomorrow to talk more about the documentary.
Yes, she's just delightful. We caught up recently because I had met her, on the phone when she was writing this book. And, you know, we joke then, well, if you're looking for dirt, you're not going to find any on Nancy Zieman, you know, right? Because, you know, when you're writing a book, you want to have some kind of friction, right? That's what sells books. It makes people turn the pages and so forth. Well, you really weren't going to find that on Nancy.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we all have a shared love of Nancy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of person, I know a few people where I say, if you don't like them, something's wrong with you. And
right.
then, you know, if you couldn't appreciate her, yeah, you need to think about yourself a little.
That's right. Kirsten Swanson said, I feel as if that she's known her name all of her life. And, you know, I would agree. And, you know, what's really interesting? Oh, I don't know what year this was, but, you know, it's going back. My sister Marie and I were at Puyallup at Sew Expo, right? Sewing and Stitchery Expo. And it was the 5th anniversary of Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine. And I had a small little dinner party for just about 8 of us who were a part of the magazine. And Nancy was one of the guests. And my sister Marie was with me. And it was the first time that Marie met Nancy. And she said to me, she whispered in my ear and she goes, I know her hands. And I thought, oh, how sweet, you know, because we did know Nancy's hands. That's what we saw on camera all the time. And so Marie was just tickled to, like, you know, see those hands reach for the breadsticks instead of, you know, I don't know. It's so much fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always tried to be taking care of my fingernails before I'd be taped. I don't have in my next life, see, I'm going to have better hair and better fingernails. That's what I've decided. But I tried to, you know, make sure I didn't get into the dirt too much. And because, the camera's there focusing on our hands a lot. So.
Right. And, you know, things have really changed. I mean, with COVID, you know, I've lost those beautiful fake nails that, I loved. And, you know, but anyway, life is different now. It's more accepting, I think, more casual. But, you know, I was always so impressed with Nancy. I mean, when you tape every other week for like your whole adult life, boy, it's hard to keep up that look. And I mean, she was a gardener, you know, when you're working in the garden, how do you keep your hands looking so sweet? Right.
Yeah. That was a huge challenge, I think, you know, coming up with all the topics, all the materials. It helped, I think, many times that she did have guests, but still it was all on her to be generating the topics and the programs. And I know she always was so kind to give credit to her team. And it wasn't like she said, oh, I've done this all by myself. That was never Nancy's take on things. So she was very eager to share the acclaim with the people.
Right. And, you know, not all guests would come with their A game, and she would have to pull the best out of it and really make it packaged into a beautiful program. So that was a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it was. So, but something that she really loved. She really loved her ability to be the host of Sewing with Nancy and to share. The sharing was so much of what she really appreciated doing. And I really enjoyed it too. Really, really liked that, you know, that my ideas were shared with a much wider audience than I would be able to do on my own.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, Mary, Julie Coleman wants to know, she says she still watches Nancy's show. Where do we register to see this? So if you missed that, you go to quiltshow.com. And that takes you to the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show homepage. And you just register there and then look for the tab on, I guess it is the schedule. And if you click on the schedule tab, you will then be taken to this page and you can register to have a virtual seat. So that's where you'll find it. And let's see. And then Vicki says, thank you for, and loves the outtakes. And you didn't say how you were doing. Oh, she's talking to somebody else. So sorry. And Linda Bowden, she said she loved Nancy so that she tried once on vacation to catch her on her shop, but just got her picture with that cutout.
Oh,
Mary, do you remember that life-size cutout that was in every sewing machine, baby lock sewing machine store in America?
right. Lots of pictures were taken with those. And sometimes one store owner told me that it was set up in the shop and she'd do a double take every time she came in the morning thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's in the store. And it was
Right,
Nancy.
right.
Um,
Oh my goodness.
my
Yeah,
husband and I had bought a sewing machine for his daughter Lucy, and we posed with the cutout in the shop in Rochester, Minnesota, where the machine was purchased. So
sure. Yeah, that was a great marketing idea for sure.
right.
And Retha Ranke has some nice comments. She says, Eileen and Mary, you're great people too, and that she has learned an awful lot from us. So we are both making Nancy proud. Thank you, Retha. That's a very kind comment. So anyway, I hope that all of you will tune in again tomorrow at 1 o'clock when I have Marge Russell here, and bring your questions. If you're reading the book now, most certainly, bring your questions. If you have read it before and you have some ideas or thoughts that you just can't quite get the answers to, Marge will have them for sure. And Mary, thank you so much. I mean, it's not like we're in Wisconsin, but it's been a lovely time with you, almost an hour today. Thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting me and for thinking of me for this. It's fun for me too. A really positive time spent talking about Nancy.
Yeah. So, Mary, well, I guess we should say, like Nancy would, bye for now.
Well.
Okay.